Welcome to Big Homeopathy. I'm your host, Sarah Thompson. Hi, welcome to Big Homeopathy. I'm your host, Big Homeopath, Sarah Thompson. Trying another new setting this week. I just wanted to get outside, even though it's kind of gloomy. So, anyway, here we are. I wonder to what extent my irritable homeopath syndrome was ameliorated by writing my post on vulnerability and authenticity last week. So often I find that when there's discomfort, it is from some old doubt or shame or insecurity that I just haven't exercised yet. And it was a great reminder that there's always a peanut gallery trying to assuage their own feelings of inadequacy. And the fact that homeopathic research will be so much more than it is now is just a great opportunity to zero in on what's the point? What's the point of this whole endeavor? And so I'm excited because I have some research to share this week in the Research and Resources arm that really speaks to the whole picture of some of the things that the irritable homeopath was concerned about. So, one of the things that the friendly troll pointed out, as all friendly trolls should, is the old saw that homeopathy is only water. And critics love to talk about the dilution aspect, but they often do not talk about the succussion aspect. And we've discussed here before how it's that impact of the vial on a hard surface that creates the friction, that creates the cavitation, that generates this level of heat, that generates the nanomaterial in the remedy solutions. And we know so much more than Hahnemann knew, but still so little. And I have a study that talks about that this week. Without the succussion, our remedies would not be effective and safe. They would be either inert or poisonous. And so it's cool. I'm going to give you the title of it from reading because it's long. To have this 2018 paper entitled Degree of Response to Homeopathic Potencies Correlates with Dipole Moment Size in Molecular Detectors. Implications for Understanding the Fundamental Nature of Serially Diluted and Succussed Solutions. So, in plain language, this is a team that had analyzed remedies in solvatochromic dyes, which are dyes that change color in the visible spectrum solutions depending on the solute. And they had discovered that different remedy solutes would yield different solvatochromic responses, that there was something happening physicochemically in these solutions. And so they wanted to take that to the next step, and they looked at a broader base of compounds that have polarization. And what they determined was that different kinds of compounds responded differently to different remedies. So there was, it was clearly not an inert substance because something would happen depending on the type of polarization, the timing of the polarization that would take place in these substances. And what that sort of revealed by inference is that there's polarity in remedies, which is something that we talk about from the analysis side all the time, these opposite poles that you can see in symptoms and in remedies. It was neat to see that revealed in a laboratory. And so I'm going to read you a quote from the conclusion. The apparent polarity of potencies, their generation through friction, their storage in ethanol water mixtures and on lactose, together with the observation that they can have their clinical effect through olfaction, argues against any kind of standard pharmaceutical formulation and points to an electromagnetic identity. Pi conjugated zwitterions respond to serially diluted and succussed solutions, which I like because I get to say zwitterion. But so the electromagnetic nature of remedies is something that we are aware of, and it helps, it explains so many things about why it's difficult to study them, why they do something in a person but not in a laboratory. But it's just great to have another level of confirmation there. And it's also something that can be helpful to communicate to clients who are interested, because that takes me to the next study that I want to talk about, which is entitled depressed patients' experiences with and perspectives on treatment provided by homeopaths, a qualitative interview study embedded in a trial. So one of the other things that the irritable homeopath was a little bent out of shape about a couple of weeks ago was the fact that the results were meant to be self-reported in those IBS studies, meaning that the patients had to write a letter or an email or call in with a survey response. And homeopathy aside, I don't know how often you fill out surveys, but this is not a great way to get information from people. And I also know that asking people how much better they feel is not that meaningful, because when you're really sick, you feel how you feel. But when you feel better, you can't remember what it was like to feel sick. If people ask me what it was like when I was really sick, I can say it was horrible, but can I really get in the space of how different that was? I don't think I can, and that's why it's my job as a homeopath to take notes, to pay attention, to observe, so that as a client gets better, they just feel better. And I can look and say, because I don't know how many times I'll have someone say, nothing's really changed. And then I start reading my notes to them and they say, oh, that is better. That is better. Huh, you're right, that has changed. It's so consistent in our practice that we see this, that having people self-report the change without an interview is, I think, somewhat fraught. And so in this research, what they did was they took patients who were moderately to severely depressed and were receiving usual care, so often antidepressants. And as I always say, it's our lot as homeopaths in this day and age to navigate pharmaceutical drug use in our patients. But they didn't know anything about homeopathy. And the ones that elected to receive homeopathic care were in consultation shortly after they'd received the remedy, and then in 6 months. So that you had a much more sort of traditional picture of how homeopaths work. And only 13 people did all three, the consult, the post-consult, and then the follow-up interview. So it's still a small sample size. But a lot of things emerged from that. First of all, people didn't know anything about homeopathy, and over the course of the 6 months of this study, they learned in their responses that this is outlined, that it was adaptive to them, to their unique condition, that it was professional and rigorous, that the homeopath really listens and without prejudice, and also has an optimism, which is something I talk about, the helpful, hopeful nature of this care, that I believe in your healing because we know what homeopathy can do. We can believe when our clients walk through the door that they have the capacity to heal, and that's not something you always get from conventional allopathic care. And to have someone listen and ask questions that really dig into where the disease comes from can help stimulate a healing response that does involve a remedy. The remedy really is opening up doors, but then the questions also inspire the growth and the direction. It's part of the midwifery that I've talked about before. One of the things that the participants said was a little confusing to them was taking the remedies, like shaking them or putting them in water, stirring them, all these different ways of taking remedies, that it seemed a little weird. And that's why it's so great to have a study like the one I just read to you, because if we can communicate, as I have said before, the days of the sort of arrogant and unreachable physician are and should be over. Patients need communication, and they need explanations, and they need an understanding. And if we can start talking about, this is the process of homeopathic remedy, and that's why it seems different, and this is how it works differently in your body, and this is why you get results from it, and why they are on a different timeline and in a different context. I think that this study also points to how much more I believe that I need to do as a practitioner. I don't think the initial follow-up and the 6-month follow-up is enough for my clients. They want way more contact, and I think with more contact, they get better results. We can move around more. We can understand what's happening. We can change direction faster if we need to, or stay the course, because sometimes that's what you've got to do. And so, for me, I think that having that relationship with the client and communicating with them and having these resources to tell them about is so beneficial. The patients did get benefits from this. Some had a lot of positive results and some had not that much. But the fact that that's real life in practice, dealing with depression. And so that is a much more accurate picture of how this benefits people. And depression and anxiety are so important to me because I've seen the damage they do. And the extent to which homeopathy can engender cure for people is so powerful. It is what makes homeopathy big, and it is going to be huge. I'll see you next week.